Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to make your own fabric cards. As you can see, they can be really bright, really pretty, and you can sew them with lots of different stitches. You can have lots of different effects. It can be a simple stripe, or you could go for lots of details. Here are 3 different ones I've made, all with the same sort of stripy design, lots of different stitches. They're great for using up those scraps you've got left over from other projects. I'm Christine of christinescrafts.com, and this channel is all about crafting on a budget. So let's use up those scraps of fabric. You're going to need a card. Now you could just use some ordinary card and cut your own cards and fold them, or you could buy cards for crafting. And then you want some fabric. Now you'll see here I've got lots of different little bits and pieces, and that's what this project is perfect for, using up those bits you've got left over from something else. These are just craft cottons. You could use whatever you like. So you saw I'd got that small rectangle. I'm just going to cut it into 2 pieces because that's what I've got in my mind for my design. You'll notice I'm using a self-healing mat and a rotary cutter. Don't worry, you can just use a pair of scissors. There's nothing wrong with that. You can have nice perfect straight lines. You could have wavy lines. You can do exactly what you want. This is your design. So you can see as I've cut 2 out, I'm starting to lay them on the card and think about what I'm doing, so I know what to cut out next. So out of this fabric, I'm going to cut a slightly wider strip because I feel that's going to be needed for this design. So just keep cutting whatever strips or shapes you like. If you want to be really adventurous, you could cut out circles or indeed any other shape you want. Just remember that you are going to have to sew around these shapes, so the more complicated it is, the more tricky the sewing. So I'm going to lay it all out again and see what I think. Yep, it's coming to what I want, and I've got that other strip up there, so I need one more strip, and I'm going to use the other fabric for that. I'm going to do all my sewing on the sewing machine. If you are very patient, you could do these by hand, but I do think you'd have to be quite patient. And I'm also going to draw your attention while I cut this one out to the fact that when you sew on your sewing machine through card, it blunts your needle. So you may want to make sure you're using an old needle and that you take it out afterwards and keep it purely for making your cards or any other sewing that you do on paper. So once you've got all the bits, just make sure you have got enough to cover your card and it's going to do what you want it to do. You can see I'm doing that here. And then it's time to formalize the design and then start sewing. These really are super quick and easy to make. So just lay it out. Don't worry about the fact it's going over the back of the card. You're not going to sew it on there. We can easily trim off all our extra bits later. Your strips can be as long as you like. You just don't want them too long or you're wasting fabric. It won't be a problem. You're going to cut it off. So as you can see, a bit of wiggling it about. I actually feel that section is just far too wide. So let's have a rethink. I don't want to waste the pieces I've cut in case I have cut them a little bit too narrow. Maybe I didn't plan this as well as I should have done. Let's see if we can turn them round and make things look a little better. Have to be careful to make sure I don't overlap too much over that pink. And yeah, I think that's going to look better. So now it's time to start sewing. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my top strip and the next strip down. I'm going to overlap it slightly and make sure they're exactly where I want them. And then I'm going to place it under the machine so that I start at the fold. Now I'm going to use a straightforward zigzag stitch. If you've got fancy embroidery stitches on your machine, feel free to use them. It can look fantastic. But a simple zigzag is all you need. So if you've got a simple zigzag machine, that is all you need to have. Do a little reverse at the beginning to make sure that it doesn't come undone, and then off you go. And sew straight along that join between the 2 pieces of fabric. It'll hold the 2 pieces together, it'll minimize the fraying, and it'll keep it looking really smart. Just work your way along. When you get to the other end, you're going to do a little reverse again. And that's it. Your 2 pieces of fabric are sewn on. I know they're not sewn on around the other edges. Don't worry about that. We'll get there. But they are now attached to your card. You need to be really careful to make sure you don't sew them onto the back of the card as well. Now you'll see as we move along that one of my seams I did go a little bit too far and it's a little bit messy, but it won't stop me giving this card away and using it. People love to receive snail mail, and if you've made it, it's even better. So as you can see, I've got a lovely zigzag stitch there, all held in place. So now I need to take the next piece of fabric and lay that on where you want it to go. Remember, this time when you're laying them on, it's permanent, so be really happy before you take it to the machine. Once you're happy, it's back to the machine and sew it in exactly the same way. Just be careful not to go beyond that fold. And now you've got all 3 sewn on. So just 1 to go. So I'm going to lay that bottom one on, and I'm going to make sure it covers some of that decorated fabric there, the pretty print, so that they look better, to me anyway. And then sew that one in exactly the same way. Now obviously if you've got 10 strips, you keep doing this till you've got all 10 on. If you've done fancy shapes, you then add those on the top. It's entirely up to you. But once you're happy, your front of your card's finished, we're going to trim off the excess fabric. So turn it over and trim off anything you can see around the edge of your card. Now again, I'm going to use the rotary cutter, but you can use a pair of scissors. Just take your time and be careful. A rotary cutter is obviously easier because you can place your ruler along the edge of the card, run your rotary cutter along, and that's it. Your fabric's gone. And repeat for the other 2 sides. Your fabric's still not going to be attached around the edge of the card, but it is now the size of the card. Now there's one more edge we need to worry about, so you're going to have to fold your card shut and cut along that edge. And this is where you'll see if you sew a little bit too far, you end up with a little bit onto the back of the card. Okay, so now we're just going to sew all the way around the edge. Again, it's up to you what stitch. I've stuck with the same zigzag so it all matches. Just start on one side and set yourself going. Now I've decided to take my zigzag right to the edge so it just goes over the edge of the card, so it'll minimize fraying. If you want a little bit of a fray on your cards, a little bit of a rough and ready look, then don't take your stitches right to the edge, and then your fabric will be able to fray a little bit on the edges. When you get to the corner, simply make sure your needle is in, lift the foot and turn through 90 degrees, and then sew along the other side. And just keep doing that at every corner you come to until you've worked your way all the way around the card. And you'll come back to where you started. Make sure you overlap the stitches you did at the beginning and do a little bit of a reverse, and that'll keep it all secure. You can clearly see the little bit where I went wrong now. So there you have it. That's how to make your cards. You can see the 3 I've made here. All very, very similar. Just different shapes, different colours, probably suitable for different events. You can see I've sewn all the way around. Looks great. This one, the little embroidery stitch, got the machine to do it, but it is a little embroidery stitch. And you're probably thinking by now, but I can see all the stitches on the inside of the card. Well, yes, you can. Doesn't bother me. I'm quite happy to leave them there. I think they look really pretty. But if they do bother you, simply cut out a piece of card that's the size of the inside of your card, stick it on, and no one will ever see your stitches again. So good luck with your fabric cards. I hope you've enjoyed watching this. And please give me a thumbs up below if you have. Drop me any comments. Let me know how you get on. And subscribe to see more of my videos. Thanks.